don't you just come with me?
Ain't nothing gonna change in Atlanta. I mean, I'm still gonna be black. Just another nigga from the ghetto.
Why do you say stupid shit like that?
Vanilla or chocolate strawberry. Let's call the whole thing up.
To balance what's going to be a sensitive but interesting topic, I wrote a light little joke to start things off on a light little note, and to poke some fun at racism itself. How can you tell if someone from Boston is racist? They drop their R's for every word except one.
What are you saying? The sheriff is near. No, gotta blame it, dang running. The sheriff is a nigger.
Have you noticed that YouTube and other platforms seem to be promoting more divisive content recently? I don't know if people are making more of it, but if you click on a racial or ethnically polarizing video, you'll get back 20. Content that might have been flagged or at least suppressed in recent years is for some reason right now being promoted. It looks like the algorithms are turning up the heat. Right now, everyone has some kind of resentment or fatigue on display. And everyone talks about how they're noticing things. Things about blacks, or things about Jews, or things about whites, things about men, things about women, things about anyone and everyone except ourselves, of course. It's always someone else.
That's not a good start, but keep going.
If you've watched some of my other Channel 11 content, then you know that this will not be a defense of any of the out-of-control behavior that has been put squarely and fairly under the microscope as of late. I've been critical of all kinds of negative behavior, even the particular ones I believe to be more prevalent in the so-called black community. We all know the kind of behaviors I'm talking about. The criticism that follows does not come from a place of hate or self-hate at all. So before I start, let me dismiss that tired dismissal. What follows is coming from an easily relatable, easy to appreciate place, that sincere corner of concern and self-interest, and I don't mind admitting it. Because in a better world, the thing that would unite everyone is a vested interest in the entirety of the human race, stepping up its game. Anyone, regardless of color, who hasn't figured out that doing better starts with you, should consider the possibility that you're the ninja that needs to be noticed right now.
That's wrong. That's wrong.
Because fools wilding out on a budget cruise ship, while aggravating and troubling, is, in the grand scheme of everything going on in the world right now, not the most important thing to fixate on. And it's why this channel can't focus on that stuff exclusively. It's why I won't dunk on black or scapegoat white as I criticize things and mindsets. It would be very easy for me to get extra clicks by taking a hard partisan stance and putting on a sensational, emotional reaction every time someone acts a fool. I too could turn on a camera and with no script, come out yelling, "What's up fam, it's your boy CL. Can you believe these ninjas are at it again?" People like that stuff. And admittedly, I dig some of it too. But I'm not interested in doing it. I'm concerned with clearly expressing as much nuance as possible in this format, and being careful not to say anything that could be reasonably misinterpreted, or anything I might regret down the road. I'm trying to be right over being seen. This makes my process a necessarily slower one, and it comes at a price. This is not to diss other creators and their approach. There's a ton of real talent out here, and being boldly critical is okay. And it can even do a lot of good depending on the approach. But performative rants are simply not what I'm trying to do here. I plan on returning to non-racial topics after today, but this one should not feel racially divisive, except of course for those who insist on being offended. I think you'll find this pointed but conciliatory and reasonable. I would prefer that the bulk of this message be something that everyone could agree on, but know full well that that's an impossible task. I'll proceed anyway. There are a lot of issues and things in the news cycle that consistently illustrates people's tendency to point the finger. And while I have no problem with where a valid criticism starts, my radar goes off depending on how and where that criticism stops. And this term exposes the limits of thinking of most people, and that's understandable. This is an emotional term. It's a polarizing term. It was intended to be polarizing. I can't think of any other word that seeks to dehumanize people as radically as this one. And yet, it's still a word. And the reactions to it, particularly the emotional ones, are telling. From this point forward, I will occasionally use the N-word explicitly in its clinical sense, because we're adults, and we need to be able to talk about this boldly if we're to talk about it honestly. With all of its spin-offs, we can't really talk about or fully appreciate the impact of nigger specifically while evading the word itself. But I will be bleeping it to prevent this video from being unnecessarily suppressed any more than it should be. The bleeps will also allow this video to point and refer to that precise potent word it's talking about, while taking off some of the sting of hearing it as it comes up. I think that's a fair trade-off.
If you do not tell us where we can buy a shrubbery, my friend and I will say, nee.
Do your worst.
Very well. If you will not assist us voluntarily, nee.
No! Never!
No, it's not that. It's nee. Nee. Nee, that's it, you've got it.
Since there is a difference between the soft and hard-ard version of this word, these terms need to be stated explicitly to avoid the confusion attached to their usage. At times I'll use the cultural default euphemism of the N-word, or I'll use the latest evasion, ninja. I'll also use these euphemisms to avoid repeating the same words over and over again. This is for the sake of variety, and not from a need to self-censor.
When you stopped Voldemort, don't say his name. Sorry. When you stopped, you know who.
You say after, and I say after. Laughter, laughter, after, after. Let's call the whole thing off.
Let's approach this touchy subject and word with a more nuanced, even-handed approach, as opposed to a rage bait one. Again, you'll find that the criticism that follows will not be directed at one group exclusively, and everyone sensitive enough will have a chance to be mildly or dramatically offended, depending on your disposition or preferences. But nothing that follows will be mean or pick on anyone based on race. Because while acknowledging that racism will always be something among people as currently constituted, I think racism's impact in recent decades has been exaggerated and used as a divisive weapon that is right now more destructive than racism itself. Let me say that again. Racial attitudes and resentments are a considerably smaller problem than how they're being used by institutions of power for the purpose of division and social engineering. And due to the dishonest, cowardly, and unsophisticated way the media and people frame matters relating to behaviors, patterns, and racial hostilities, our culture is growing more of the bad stuff. It's very obvious what's happening and the trap that's being set.
I've got one that can see.
I don't like this one bit.
Like the game of chess, let's begin by moving the white piece. Anyway, regarding the defense of the N-word being used by white people, one argument you'll hear quite often from some folks is that black people use it too. In fact, they use it so much and it's so pervasive in black culture, how can black people even pretend to be offended by it? And this I find to be an either disingenuous or short-sighted argument. But it's not a non-starter. We can use it to open things up. Because nigger versus nigga, even though it's a lame attempt to take back that word, which it doesn't, by the way, nigga is a valid contextual distinction in certain situations. And it does matter because context matters. So we'll start from there. And I'll get into the specifics of this point in a minute.
And being that we use it as a term of endearment, niggas start to bug to the domas where the fear went.
I get tired of people talking about bad words and bad language. Bullshit. It's the context that makes them good or bad.
Most everyone, regardless of color or political affiliation, is very capable of understanding contextual distinctions when it benefits them, and when other people not understanding context enacts a price upon them. This is the tendency of most people to make contextual distinctions and apply rational thinking selectively and beneficially, and it's f***ing infuriating. Black people do this, white people do this, every group seems to succumb to this tendency. We are all definitely and differently selfish in quality and quantity. And if we could admit that much, the rest of this will be more enlightening than offensive. Because most everyone likes to think or say that their ideological opposition is incapable of rationality and unable to perceive contextual distinctions. And this is most certainly not the case. Most people, in my experience, are quite capable of seeing the complexity of things, just long enough for it to include themselves and often themselves exclusively. And people can see and will complain about other people doing this very thing, even as they do it themselves. Have you noticed this? You have a blind spot, says everyone about everyone else. And this is why together we're all failing on this planet. And of course, I include myself in this criticism. I've done this too, and can only try to minimize this tendency in myself. Most of us are so concerned with winning arguments that we don't admit when we're wrong, or when our opponents simply have a valid point. With all of this so-called black fatigue, the N-word is being thrown around a lot more carelessly right now. I don't love the word, but I don't believe that using it should require you to lose your job, or get publicly exposed, or to have to move because of it. Of course, there are times when it's appropriate for a business to make the business decision to fire someone after their subpar behavior has been turned into internet content. I'm all in on criticizing bad behavior, but maybe we don't need to share everything. The right response to a charged situation, again, depends on context. The way we do things and the order we do them in matters. Everything is contextual, which means there'll never be a singular formula that'll work or will please everyone. As a society, we always have to ask, what is the right response here in consideration of the unique circumstances of this situation? This includes the out loud use of the N-word and how we respond to the out loud use of the N-word. And regarding the N-word, everyone would do well to consider for themselves when and why do they want to say it. Because there's going to be a lot of different motivations that don't break down as cleanly as racism for white folks or racial empowerment for black folks. Asking this question introspectively and fearlessly can yield some insight. By their own admission, we know there are some white people that simply think that black people are inherently and significantly inferior and are thus deserving of the N-word designation, regardless of reality and against all of the many considerations that make a person largely good or largely bad. But I suspect that a larger portion of the white population are resorting to inflammatory language as a natural response to a media-driven culture that decided to permit and even promote poor social behavior, while branding anyone who criticizes it with a scarlet R, even when the criticism is well considered and calmly delivered. In reality, racially charged situations are often more complicated than we might perceive. We should all be more willing to concede that sometimes the motivation behind things are racist, other times they're not. Sometimes the ugliest things are said, not so much from sincere belief, but from the desire to hurt the other person as badly as possible in the moment. Other times, people feel the pull of their emotions and assumptions and allow it to take them to crazy town, regardless of reality or consequences.
Sometimes you feel like a nut, sometimes you don't.
But here's where this gets really touchy. What if there is racial bias or even hatred driving a criticism? Does that by itself invalidate the criticism? Can we learn nothing about ourselves from someone else's resentments? The scary adult answer to that question is,
yes, we can.
The government and the media's overall effect on race relations must be restated. They are not anyone's friends. Through numerous figurative channels, our culture is being shaped to promote the spread of racial disharmony. Beyond censorship, one way this happens is through the unsophisticated framing of racial and non-racial topics constrained for the fragile sensibilities of our most sensitive neighbors. Through this constraint, destructive but also constructive criticism is limited, and this guarantees that progress stagnates while problems proliferate, and this drives further resentment. But by letting our emotions get the best of us, we fall into the trap. Since its inception, the media has functioned at least partly as a divisive mediator, but they haven't done it without the help of our own pathologies, resentments, and reactions. Humans are predictably selfish, and that makes our culture and its citizens predictably controllable.
Good, Anakin, good. Kill him. Kill him now.
I shouldn't.
Do it.